Senator from Louisiana.
Mr. President, I rise to speak about Judge Kavanaugh's nomination to be Justice Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. Now, let me begin, Mr. President, by saying the Senate has been hard at work vetting and confirming good judges to the bench. So far, the Senate has confirmed 60 of President Trump's judicial nominees, an historic pace that includes 26 circuit judges, 33 district court judges, and Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. This week we'll confirm even more as the confirmation process continues for President Trump's second Supreme Court nominee, Judge Brett Kavanaugh. I'd also like to point out in this last week and two, the Democratic minority has been very cooperative with this, appointing good conservative Republicans to the district and circuit courts. But let me continue about Judge Kavanaugh. First, let's just say that he is well regarded by his peers. He's a mainstream independent jurist who is extremely well regarded across the political spectrum. All you have to do is look at Judge Kavanaugh's professional career to see why. His record at the Supreme Court as a clerk is stellar. The Supreme Court, as a circuit court judge at a circuit court judge, which was then reviewed by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has adopted positions advanced by his opinions at least 13 times and overruled him only once. On the D.C. Circuit Court, Democratic-appointed judges were just as likely to join Judge Kavanaugh's published majority opinions in full as his Republican-appointed colleagues, about 88% of the time. Two of President Obama's Solicitor Generals praised Judge Kavanaugh, saying he is, quote, incredibly brilliant, careful, he's an incredibly brilliant, careful person, end quote, who is, quote, very gracious on the bench and off, end quote. One says, quote, he carries out all phases of his responsibilities as a judge in the way you'd want, in an exemplary way. So that said, Judge Kavanaugh is acknowledged as being highly qualified. And even though they're on the opposite side of the aisle, these legal figures respect Judge Kavanaugh's qualifications and depth of experience. Lisa Blatt, who worked in the Solicitor General's office for 13 years during the Clinton, Bush, and Obama administration, said, quote, sometimes a superstar is just a superstar. This is the case with Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who has long been considered the most qualified nominee for the Supreme Court if Republicans secure the White House. The Senate should confirm him. She also said, quote, I expect my friends on the left will criticize me for speaking up for Kavanaugh, but we all benefit from having smart, qualified, and engaged judges on our highest court, regardless of the administration that nominates them. I have to say, on a personal level, that when I met Judge Kavanaugh in my office, I was incredibly impressed. We talked about his views on the role of the judiciary, original intent, the importance of interpreting the Constitution as written, and it was clear that he had a deep and thorough grasp of the law and these issues. But you don't have to take my word for it, and you don't have to take Lisa Blatt's word. She's not the only one who has attested that Judge Kavanaugh is a legal superstar. Recently, over 100 students, alumni, and faculty at Yale College wrote that Judge Kavanaugh is, quote, a distinguished jurist with deep conviction and integrity. The American Bar Association, which Democratic leaders have called their gold standard of judicial evaluations, unanimously rated Judge Kavanaugh as well qualified. Last week, 144 law professors from around the country wrote to the Judiciary Committee in support of Judge Kavanaugh, saying that they, quote, all agree that he displays outstanding scholarly and academic virtues and that he would bring to the court an exceptional record of distinction in judicial service. These 144 law professors also state that they are, quote, impressed by Judge Kavanaugh's long record of teaching and mentoring students of diverse backgrounds. As an example, perhaps, members of the Harvard Law School chapter of the Black Law Students Association have been vocal in their support for Judge Kavanaugh, citing the positive impact that he has had on their chapter. They know his character. It is the same humility and generosity we all saw just a couple days after he was nominated in July, when he was spotted serving hot meals to the needy alongside other volunteers with Catholic Charities, a ministry he has been part of for a long time. Now, I will also say that he is one of the most transparent nominees in history. And this is the nominee that Senate Democrats label extreme. Please, we know most of them announced their opposition to Judge Kavanaugh before his confirmation even started. We also know many of them announced their opposition before he was even named. And we know they did so because they want a Supreme Court full of liberal activists who will help them create law instead of following the law. That's not Judge Kavanaugh. He's a mainstream independent jurist who respects the Constitution. He doesn't try to rewrite it for political reasons to fit his own opinions about the way it should be. And that's apparently why Democrats are concocting a new reason every day to explain why they wish to block him. Their latest excuse is they want more time to see documents. Now, let's be absolutely clear. Judge Kavanaugh's professional record is the most transparent record the Senate has ever had for a Supreme Court nominee, and it's not even close. The Senate Judiciary Committee has received more pages of executive branch records for Judge Kavanaugh's nomination than for the last 5 confirmed Supreme Court nominees combined. The committee has reviewed more than 440,000 pages of documents submitted from Judge Kavanaugh's time in the executive branch, the largest volume of records for any Supreme Court nominee ever. During his time on the bench, Judge Kavanaugh authored more than 300 opinions and heard more than 2,000 cases. No less than 9 Senate Democrats cited their review of his opinions when they announced weeks ago that they would oppose him. They said they had seen enough of his record, and now we're supposed to believe they want to see more of his record. It's obvious that this argument is not in good faith. And indeed, I think it's fair to say that the Democratic senators' disruptions show desperation. And if you will, we see this desperation in some of the most shameful political theatrics that we have seen, and those were those from the Senate Democrats in the committee hearing today. It's clear they're increasingly desperate to resist this incredibly qualified nominee. They're throwing everything and anything against the wall, but nothing is sticking. Today we learned that the minority leader, the Democratic minority leader, plotted a coordinated protest strategy over the weekend with his members, and they all agreed to disrupt and protest the hearing. They would like to think it was a spontaneous outburst of righteous anger, and indeed it was a planned strategy in order to draw attention to themselves. I would remind my colleagues across the aisle that this is the United States of America, not a third world legislative body where they toss decorum out the window, scream and shout, throw chairs and punches in order to thwart the legislative process. Those who are interested in preserving and protecting our democratic process and institutions should shun the chaos Senate Democrats appear intent upon creating. In this country, we debate and evaluate ideas and nominees on the merits. I urge my colleagues to do just that. And if they do, I am confident they will understand the broad support, the justified support, that Judge Brett Kavanaugh has for his nomination to the Supreme Court. I yield the floor.